We're now going to hear from Angus Campbell on the future of Australia's land operations. General Campbell was made Chief of Army on the 16th of May this year. He's prior to that, of course, he was commanding Operation Sovereign Borders. Angus has had a stellar career combining extensive operational experience and senior policy and strategic roles. He's known as a thoughtful individual, a person skilled in policy and a lateral thinker. If that doesn't build the expectations high enough, Angus, please let me know. You do us a great honour by coming to speak to us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Chief of Army, General Angus Campbell.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you might just look to the screens.
Marshall was the worst in Belushi Valley. Set about 600 metres back from the green zone itself. Yeah, it was a wild west. The Taliban that were there were just ruthless.
They were up against a hardened and wily enemy, prepared to exploit any advantage.
I remember thinking, like, shit, I'm literally about to get shot in the face here. And I remember distinctly thinking, well, I hope it doesn't hurt then. Someone's been shot!
The Taliban saw the way Western armies did their business and reacted with the most cost-efficient and effective means they could to disrupt us, and that's IEDs. And there's no doubt about that. It was actually probably pretty successful.
Right, mate? Go! Hey, crossing right there, go.
You got this. Don't worry about it.
Get out of here.
4 guys went home injured, and that was, I hadn't even seen any action yet. You know what I mean? Like we were there, but I'd lost 4 guys to start with, and I took that pretty hard.
It flew me about a metre back. I can pretty much remember everything by the time I landed on my back. My number 2. He was telling me to lay, and he was there holding my head together because it was obviously split open. During the fog of war, you hear your mates, and all you care about is your mates, and having that comfort around you is fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, that sobering piece of reality TV is an example of why soldiers' kit matters. Thanks to Chris Jenkins, Talis, and their Bushmaster, everyone survived that blast. Chairman Stephen Loosley, Executive Director Peter Jennings, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I very much appreciate the opportunity to address you today so early in my tenure as Chief of Army. Let me say at the outset, it is an extraordinary privilege to be invited to lead the Australian Army, a privilege carrying with it a deep responsibility and obligation to our nation and people, especially those parents who entrust their dearest treasure to Army's care. I can proudly say that the Australian Army is a great national institution and a very fine fighting force, but in neither is it perfect, and in both we must always strive to improve. Today I'd like to set out some principles by which you can expect to see me operate and the priorities I have set for the next steps in Army's journey. The video you just watched is an excerpt from the Army's Afghanistan multimedia website, launched last month. I encourage you to meet some of our people and their stories, the inspiring, challenging, confronting, and above all, honest reflections of men and women at war. Our operations in Afghanistan and elsewhere over recent years remind us that if we don't innovate, we won't sustain an advantage over a future adversary. War can be very Darwinian. I can attest that the Taliban were a dangerous, elusive and adaptive enemy, but not the only threat, nor indeed the most dangerous we might reasonably be expected to confront. Much of the equipment and procedures in the video were rapidly procured or developed to maintain a tactical superiority over that enemy. Already we have seen in Iraq the more capable Daesh or ISIL emerge, fighting with heavy weapon systems, a mix of conventional and irregular tactics, and a pernicious campaign of terror and radicalisation over the internet. And the Taliban and Daesh, of course, add to, rather than replace, the less common but more catastrophic experience of state-on-state warfare for which any army and defence force must be prepared. In my role to lead and prepare army to serve its nation, my career experience has developed in me a profound commitment to the value, indeed the necessity, of joint interagency, coalition and allied operations as the best and most sustainable way to pursue our nation's interests. This is because of the extraordinary skills and potential for greatness resident within our people, especially when we team across the boundaries of a diverse national and regional community. The Army has an important contribution to make to this team, bringing many unique and useful capabilities. Important, but not always preeminent. Context is all. Unsurprisingly, as a Chief of Army, I am not an adherent to the false god of high-tech war that declares armies redundant, so banal is this analysis. Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster speaks in his usual compelling way on this topic in his recent essay, Change and Continuity, the Nature of Future Armed Conflict. Worth a read. Like all of you, I dread war and would welcome quick, clean, bloodless, decisive clashes. But when Shakespeare wrote, "Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war," he reminded us that these dogs, elsewhere referred to as famine, sword and fire, have a will of their own. A war started is not necessarily a war ended. Home by Christmas an illusion. War can slip easily out of the control of any of its belligerents. On land, at sea, or in the air, cyber and space domains, war can all too easily spill over the convenient boundaries and timelines we so desire of it. An adversary on the defensive is an adversary looking for another domain in which to attack. This violent clash of wills doesn't necessarily end when or how we choose. In the deeply human and political tragedy that is war, in the last resort, violence often comes to a dramatic, exhausted or lingering close on land, because that is where we live. However, this is no easy pass. The Australian Army should always be able to explain to the government and the people its role and utility within a wider team in defence of our nation and its interests. Hence, I welcome the debate and discussion generated at forums such as this on the utility and evolution of land forces in modern operations, and in particular the Australian Army. Although I cannot be here tomorrow, I do want to acknowledge all our guest speakers and ASPI's effort in putting a fantastic conference together. I would particularly note two of our brigade commanders who will tomorrow give what might be described a middle-aged Turk's view of where to from here. Their views I can assure you, are worth listening to. At Army's handover of command ceremony, I briefly noted 4 broad priorities that I am committed to and which are reflective of continuity between chiefs over a number of years. These priorities are support to operations, because that's why we exist. Support to our wounded, injured and ill, because it's the right thing to do and it rebuilds lives and human capability for Army and Australia. Modernisation of the Army, because I want to ensure our people have the best chance of coming home. And cultural renewal, because ethical soldiers working as a team are our most powerful weapon. Today, I'm going to concentrate on the third priority, modernisation. But before I do, let me make a few comments about the others, because they are all deeply interrelated. Support to operations is obvious, but has many deeper implications. We fight joint, certify and deploy joint, command and control joint, increasingly deploy joint doctrine, and many of the most powerful asymmetric efforts and effects we can generate are uniquely joint. And these joint forces team with interagency, coalition and allied partners. Recent adjustments to organisational and command arrangements within the ADF, announced in the First Principles Review, reflect the importance of strengthening the centre and enabling next steps in our joint development. I'm very excited about the possibilities for the ADF of these changes, and suspect historians will look back on this decade as the tipping period in building joint forces characterised by deep environmental expertise. So important is this change, I clearly need very strong performers in joint billets. As I said, support to operations has many profound and positive implications for Australia and Army. Supporting our wounded, injured and ill is an ethical choice, which I see being made all over Australia, and for which I am very appreciative and proud. We didn't do so well in this regard as a nation after Vietnam, but we have come to recognise that. We all rightly want the best outcome for a group of young Australians with a lot more to give to our nation. I would also note that the Department of Veterans Affairs has done extraordinary work in recent years, and I encourage any soldier in need to get connected and seek support early. The Defence Abuse Response Task Force provided us with a stark looking glass into 60 years of abuse in the ADF. Each dark case is unique, deeply personal and utterly unacceptable, but all are common in as much as each was a manifestation of the abuse of professional power, be it rank, status, experience, age or influence. And these abuses continued because of a permissive organisational culture, a culture which undermined capability. In an organisation that recruits thousands of people each year, cultural renewal cannot and does not stop. It's a command responsibility to drive and an individual responsibility to live. As the first equal opportunity employer of Indigenous peoples in Australia, the Army has a proud history of inclusion to build upon. As Australians, we are privileged to have some of the finest young people on the planet, with the heritage of more than 180 national, cultural, ethnic groups. I want our institutional culture to give every Australian that serves under the rising sun the opportunity to be and do their best. Turning now to modernisation. the Australian Army tries to adapt to the possibilities of the future through continuous modernisation. We don't predict the future, but rather we look to the broad indicators. The Army's 2014 Future Land Warfare Report, which I commend to you, identified 5 trends that will likely shape future war: crowded, connected, lethal, collective and constrained. Interlinked, these trends are also converging. These are not simply big or pervasive changes, they broadly outline our future operating environment and will transform the ways we think, operate, cooperate and contribute as an army. The Army does not and should not have the luxury of choosing the type of war or security operation in which we might become involved. That is a decision for government. But we have to structure for and be competent in land joint warfare, our unique contribution to national capability. Everything else we do, or might be called upon to do, is less difficult. The ADF presents capability options and risks for government consideration. Failure in this context is the absence of response options. Our Army and our Defence Force has always sought to be postured and poised for a range of possible challenges. This will continue, I think, given our interests in the world are so extensive. What our white paper process provides is some prioritisation of effort, principally within the Indo-Pacific, and some tempering of Truman's military-industrial complex. Today, we see terrorism, intrastate conflict, great power positioning, state instability, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, all at play, and all affecting Australia and its interests. Because of life's inherent uncertainties, I want the joint force to be as capable as our nation can afford. And I'm delighted at the quality of the air and naval forces Australia is building. We will always be stronger working together. In these interesting times, I follow a long line of Army chiefs who have actively sought to align the organisation to the future needs of our nation. And I'm well aware that the future can be a contact sport here in Canberra. Post-East Timor 1999, Lieutenant General Lay started our development as a digital force and sought to protect soldiers from the increasing lethality of modern weapons. Over a decade, we incorporated network decision-making and hardened our equipment. The Army fundamentally started to adapt to its changing operating environment. Under the stewardship of Lieutenant General Gillespie, the modern combat soldier received improved personal equipment, force protection including faster procurement of urgent operational equipment was the priority. Additionally, Army was restructured to forge better links between force generation and the operations we were undertaking. More recently, Lieutenant General Morrison enabled the restructure of combat elements to build sustainable, modular and combat-effective brigades prepared, deployed and supported by enabling structures and systems. My general officers and I will continue this modernisation story to ensure Army remains ready and relevant. The ability of our Army to ready and relevant. With a white paper and force structure review not far away, and while still calibrating my own instincts with both reality on the ground and the views of my colleagues, I'm not inclined to declare my particular modernisation focus just yet. And I need, after all, to consider the perspectives offered by both the Assistant Minister and his opposition shadow. Suffice it to say, that what is most important to me is that we have an informed, rigorous, open and contested approach to modernisation. I also need that approach to be responsive to the needs of troops in contact. In this regard, innovations such as digger works have been extremely valuable. Our modernisation effort supports Army's contribution to a broad range of operations. The following are 3 examples of issues we might consider in how Army does so. Firstly, the Army contributes to developing Australia's key international security relationships, building confidence and promoting common strategic understanding and interests. The Defence White Paper is likely to reinforce the importance of this ADF role, and I look forward to working with our partners throughout the Indo-Pacific region to align effort, build capacity and enhance cooperation. Secondly, the Army contributes to deterring and, if required, defeating coercion of or attacks on Australia and its interests, particularly access to trade and commerce, the lifeblood of an island nation. This includes denying an enemy the freedom to operate within our extended approaches. The ability of our Army to contribute to a strategic deterrence effect as part of our maritime strategy will increase with the development of an amphibious capability centred on 2 landing helicopter dock ships. How Army, as part of a broader team, might support a maritime posture and the potential for the Army to contribute to access and area denial in the approaches to Australia needs also to be carefully considered. Thirdly, the Army makes a substantial contribution to the headquarters that might be expected to lead operations aimed at assisting or maintaining the stability of states within our extended approaches. I cannot stress enough the importance to Army and the ADF of the capability resident in the deployable Joint Force headquarters. There may be circumstances in which Australia leads a combined joint headquarters somewhere in the region, just as the then Major General Peter Cosgrove led in East Timor in 1999. To fulfil this role in the second decade and beyond of the 21st century will require integration of a myriad of command and control systems not in existence at the time of the interfet operation. More generally, as technology advances, so too does lethality and the proliferation of affordable weapons. As a result, most advanced land forces have been improving their standard levels of protection and mobility. In the next 10 years, the Army will see substantial investment in protection and mobility. The projects focused on mission command systems, the introduction of protection from blast for our fleet of light, medium and heavy trucks, and the replacement of our combat reconnaissance vehicles and armoured personnel carriers. These projects combine to deliver vehicles that are more than replacements for their predecessors. They provide protected weapon systems which are also a hub for communications, information, sustainment and fire support, enhancing the capacity of a ground force to absorb surprise and achieve tactical success in an era of democratised lethality. Understanding the broad parameters of future land warfare environments and the operating concepts applicable to them can produce valuable insights to focus our development and enhance the Army's strategic utility and tactical effectiveness in the defence of our nation and its interests. When complemented by a focus on people, culture and teaming beyond boundaries, I put it to you that we are committed to building and sustaining a great Army, worthy of its Anzac heritage and suited for the demands of current and future operations. Thank you.
Anthony Bergen from ASPI. Thanks very much, Angus. You set the strategic circumstances that the Army is likely to face. I guess one of the basic questions I would ask you is, are you comfortable with the actual size of the Army to do the sort of things that you set out this morning? are we actually going to need a bigger army? Thank you.
I certainly accept that it's a very challenging task, but I've not met a Chief of Army who was necessarily comfortable with the size of his force. And in this regard, it's more important to me that we're confident we are getting the most value from every one of the people that are serving with us. I see it as a single total force of our full-time and our part-time soldiers. Every day we have hundreds of part-time soldiers working on full-time, either short or long assignments. It's a very integrated force. But my question is much more focused on, are we right-suited with each element to create a force, a total force, that can fit the range of jobs? I mentioned that we have some powerful asymmetric effects, but they are not necessarily traditional effects. We also have, understandably, a deep historical connection to what might be regarded as traditional effects. There is always a tension in building the new and in updating and bringing forward that which has been resident in your force. I'm very keen to look at that question rather than to go straight to a government, any government, and put my hand out. I will if I think that were to be necessary, but I don't think I can fairly front any minister to say right now that I have done everything I can to get the most capability from what we have.
I'll ask a question, General Campbell, if I may. You talked about this decade being potentially the tipping point for jointery. What will success look like if you can cast forward to the end of your time and your handover to a successor? What will joint success look like for Army?
Not for Army, for the ADF. I see it successful for everybody in the ADF, but what will joint look like? What will that outcome be? It'll be an environment in which those joint effects that are increasingly prevalent are as robustly sustained in a raise, train and sustain sense as any other element of our Defence Force, and that they are integrated into campaign planning, training and the conduct of operations, that we have officers and soldiers across the services who experience both their deep environmental professional expertise, and they also are highly comfortable with operating in and utilising effects that may not come from any of the three traditional services, but rather from the in-between space where a great deal of power and potential exists for us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Cameron-Scott from the University of Sydney. General, you've noticed the intention to increase the capacity to care for the wounded, injured and ill, but the Australian Defence Force has had difficulties in retaining and attracting health professionals for some time. And I'm just wondering, in the absence of that, how are you hoping to increase or address that capacity to provide that care?
I'd actually have to refer you to our Commander of Joint Health and the Vice Chief, who have more detailed knowledge in terms of numbers and so forth across the ADF. My point here is that the three services and the ADF in toto, with the Department of Veterans Affairs, with many of the veterans assistance groups, not-for-profit organisations, there's a great deal of effort in trying to ensure that we, for each of our people, provide a supportive environment which ends up with three outcomes. One is a person is fully rehabilitated, returning to their primary role in our military and in the Army. Second is that if that is not possible, a person finds a productive opportunity in another part of the Defence Force where they can contribute as part of a team and with a sense of a future and progress in their lives. The third is a circumstance where persons cannot continue to serve in the military, and that there is a seamless and supportive transition for that person into a productive opportunity and a future life that is as best as it can be made for them. Now, I think that we ought to be looking to assist people to achieve an independence and an opportunity for the future, as opposed to a sense of dependence. And that's the aspiration of all of the organisations involved.
General, thank you very much for a very informative address. I'd like to invite you to speak to perhaps the military diplomacy and regional engagement piece over the next short term. We obviously now have a very significant defence cooperation program with PNG, burgeoning relationships in our region. How big a focus will you bring to that part of your task?
So regional engagement has been an important component of the work of the ADF. My sense of the white paper development process is that it is likely to emphasise it even more strongly. This I welcome. The value of regional engagement is that in all forms, capacity building, cooperation, sharing of perspectives, and building personal relationships, it provides pathways other than conflict. And it rapidly accelerates the opportunities to support others. And it projects, I would like to think, a sense and a posture into the world of a respect for international order and the value of an international system. My sense is that our region needs that form of effort and that scale of effort, and that it is going to be unique to our own region. It's not replacing or transporting the architectures of other parts of the world. And I'm very keen to see it understood as a posture, preparation, shaping and supporting component to a force, preparation, warfighting training complement. It's not either or. It's better that we shape our world and we train than we fight. And I'd like to think that that would be the effort of all involved.
Ladies and gentlemen, please thank the Lieutenant General.